the United States wrap up a 2-game series in Europe, the first of which they faced off against England. And that resulted in a 2-1 loss. The 2019 World Cup champions falling to the 2022 Euro champions. And that set the stage for this second match against Spain, which everyone I think sort of had their eyes on coming out of that England match, not just because it was the next one in front of him, but some of the storylines around this Spain national team as well. Perhaps maybe some of us thinking that maybe this one was going to be a little bit more even. We're going to, what could we see out of this game between these two teams, or what we've heard from the US side of things, that the emphasis on results have been subdued a little bit going into these matches in light of all of the news coming out around women's professional soccer in the United States. But looking at the Spanish side of things, they also have been dealing with some things between a key number of players and the Spanish Federation as well. 15 players notably missing on this Spain national team roster. 15 players who came together and tried to reach out to their federation to bring attention to what they're referring to, toxic playing environments under and led by head coach Jorge Vidal. And ultimately, that falling on deaf ears because the federation took those emails from those players as a resignation, quite frankly, as
private
players.
They took private emails, made them public, and took player resignation.
Yeah, and they have sort of said that they will not be calling these players back in until they apologize. That was the wording that was used. Apologize and ask for forgiveness. So we were a number of us were wondering what this game would look like, could look like. Essentially, being touted as a B team, right, for Spain. Didn't look like that in this match, quite frankly. Let's maybe sort of start there. We're talking about maybe big names that might have been missing for Spain, but the United States going into this one as well. Emily Fox listed out with a concussion. We saw Carson Pickett get called in to her place, and she was tasked with the start. We saw, certain players on minutes restrictions, whether that was a player like Huerta or Crystal Dunn, who's working back in and building up her minutes with the national team at this point. So we already knew that the team was going to be without a Mallory Pugh, without an Alex Morgan. They were unavailable for these games, even as they got kicked off against England. But, looking at this match, when we did the preview for this game specifically, Lisa, we sort of were talking about what maybe we would like to see in this match. I know I expressed that I'd wanted to see another consecutive start for Trinity Rodman. When you saw the starting 11 drop for this game, what did you think when you took a look at it?
Yeah, I was pleased to see Trinity Rodman getting the start again. The front attacking six for the United States were the same that Vlatko Andonovski rolled out for the England match. So that's Megan Rapinoe, Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman as the front three, and then Lindsay Horan, Andy Sullivan, and Rose Lavelle in the midfield. And I wasn't too surprised, but then as I continued to read the starting lineup, I was a little bit surprised to see that Naomi Girma was not getting the start in the center back role, because I think she just did a tremendous job against England. She's proven herself in domestic play with San Diego Wave in the NWSL. And I think she had a really, really good game against England. So the fact that you don't give her the start again and have a little bit of consistency in that center back role tells me that in substituting in Becky Sauerbrunn for Girma alongside Alana Cook, that Girma maybe is still a bit of a question mark to him in some senses, or Cook is the stable one in that center back duo. And Sauerbrunn, they're trying to rotate her in and out. But that was shocking to me, because I think Girma should have deserved to start perhaps over Alana Cook, because I don't think Alana Cook had the strongest showing against England. I think Germa outplayed her. And I think obviously hindsight is always 2020. And looking back at this Spain game, I wonder how Germa would have done in that center back pairing and doing. Between the outside backs, Carson Pickett sliding into the left back role for Emily Fox. It's not a surprising swap by any means. We knew Emily Fox was out on concussion protocol, out of this roster after England's match on Friday, and Pickett was being called in. And the fact that we saw May start in the right back role, not too surprising considering she played there at the end of the England match. But I was still shocked to not see Huerta there and Germa, just considering how they played in that England match. So if I was expecting changes in this one, it was not coming in taking Germa out. It was maybe going to see Ashley Hatch get a start up top, or different midfield rotation with Sam Coffey getting more minutes centrally, but that's not at all what we saw. And then, of course, Casey Murphy, the other change, 4 changes for Vlatko Andonovski, all defensive changes in Pickett, Sauerbrunn, Mace, and Murphy in goal for Alyssa Nair. But you got to see Rodman get the start up top, something that you wanted to see again. How do you think her play compared to the England match versus this one against Spain?
You know what? I thought we saw more out of Rodman in the game against England.
Yeah.
That's not to say that we didn't see enough or continued development or progress in this one against Spain, because something that I think is honestly a bit of a common thread in both of the games, sort of an overarching view, is and this is actually a compliment because it's something that I've really appreciated out of Rodman's play this year in her second year in NWSL, is her defensive work rate on the pitch. We know that Trinity Rodman is a brilliant attacker. She is a smart player when she gets on the ball and wants to make backlines and opposition's play. She's not intimidated, by the concept of going 1v1, or selfish in the sense where she is afraid to make the extra pass, right? But something else that we've seen out of her over the course of her NWSL play is her defensive work rate as well. She's been covering a lot of ground. And while, yes, that's a compliment, I think over these 2 games, you do have to wonder if maybe that was not so much like a detriment to the 2 games that had 2 losses, but I think you want to see out of this particular player those abilities, those attacking abilities that we know she has sort of exhibited already. So sort of having that full 90 minutes against England, I thought there was a lot more there, right, in between the lines, than perhaps the 45 or so that she got against this Spain side, particularly because the whole team at times during this game against Spain, looked a little flat at times. It just, everybody looked a little bit off, and you just have to wonder about it a little bit.
Yeah, flat's a really good word for it. And maybe it was a little bit of a quick turnaround, right? The travel, but that's very typical for friendlies, a pair of friendlies, to have that turnaround. And I don't know, flat is definitely a word for it. And you have to take into account the mental side of everything that has kind of taken a toll on these players in the last week after the Yates investigation results have come out and been released. Everything that is affecting those players. And you look at the Spain side and everything they're dealing with off the pitch as well. I do think that leading up to the England match for the United States, there was a little bit more intensity and hype for that match, playing against England, right? Huge competitors for the United States, European champions at Wembley. The stadium was rocking. There was maybe a little bit more buildup to that game. And still the United States walking away with a loss in that one, but they did score 2 goals, 1 goal in that match. But conceding 2, right? Like 2 goals in both of these games. I think that's something that needs to be circled and looked at, and kind of where those breakdowns are happening higher up the pitch, whether it's losing the ball in the midfield, not looking to get back on top of the ball as soon as you lose it, right? So it's first 3 steps as a player, that as soon as you lose it, first 3 steps, get back on the ball. And those were that jolts that we didn't see from the United States in this match against Spain, about working every which way to get the ball back as soon as you lose it. And then there becomes breakdowns defensively when you're unorganized and stretched out of shape. And I think Spain, I mean, I'm not discrediting them at all. They had a good game. I think Spain played well with the players that they had, and I think they moved the ball really well. And honestly,
it's unfortunate, and quite frankly, with everything going on with those 15 players out of Spain and the federation, you hate to see it, and you hate to even think about it, because it's almost like they made Vidal look like a genius, at a point. I mean, some of these goals, you have to talk about these goals that were conceded, right? We had a goal from Spain in that first half, and in the winding minutes of that first half, we're talking about 39th, 40th minute. This first goal coming off of a set piece of all things against the United States. So against the run of play, this wasn't some beautiful tiki-taka, 1,100 players touching the ball before, it gets into the back of the net. Like, no, this was a failed clearance, off of a corner kick, and boom, you have the first goal. And this is not only is this a goal that's conceded off of corner kick, it's a goal that's conceded off a corner kick by Spain after the United States had an opportunity off of a set piece of their own. So just sort of looking at these things a little bit, you sort of, maybe that of the two goals, perhaps maybe that was the one where you sort of looked at and said, maybe that mental aspect of the United States isn't here in this game, and understandably so. We've been talking about it all week, right? In the build up to these games. But you go into the halftime down 1-0, you look for adjustments. And I don't know if we actually really saw that out of the coaching staff in this game. I mean, that probably had a ton to do with it as well. I mean, if your team is struggling mentally, if you're witnessing firsthand the very difficult week they're having leading up to some of these matches, you have to try to prepare them the best that you can. That's your job as a coach, as a coaching staff. And just sort of seeing the lack of adjustment to sort of combat a 5-back, from Spain at times, and just lack of ideas, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah. So in this match, I think in every soccer game, it comes down to goals that are really well scored by the other team, when you just say like, wow, that's a great goal. And there are other moments where you say, hey, we gave that to them. That was a defensive breakdown or whatever it was. And on the first goal that Spain scored, the corner kick, it was a bad defensive breakdown from the United States, because it was sloppy from both sides. It wasn't, hey, that was a great goal by Spain. I mean, they got a goal. They found the back of the net. I'm sure they're happy about that, especially in the first half of this game. So now they're going into the locker room 1-up. But for the United States, that is bad defending. I mean, Carson Pickett slips on the ball, so that's unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just an unfortunate situation that happens. But they don't get to the ball first. They don't clear it out on the first touch. So that's something that the United States definitely talked about in the locker room, because it's a set piece. All you've got to do is mark your man, mark your area, and be the first one and the second one to the ball and get it out. Like, that's how you simplify situations like that. And they couldn't do that. They didn't win the first ball. They didn't win the second ball, and they don't end up clearing it. Then when it does drop to Spain's players, no one steps for it. Watching that goal happen was infuriating. I was like, what's happening? Are they stuck in the mud? Like, why is no one stepping to those players? And that's a bad defensive breakdown on the United States part.
I was eager to hear your thoughts on it, right? Whenever I'm seeing a defensive breakdown, I'm like, I want to ask my friend and former defender, Lisa Roman, about it. But I was absolutely thinking, when I saw this first goal happen and just sort of the lack of clearances, I was like, oh boy, can't wait to hear Lisa talk about this one. But even with all that, like I said, going into a half down 1-0, it is not an unmanageable game at this point, right? I think that's like the general concept. You're thinking coming out of the second half is, yes, perhaps make some adjustments. Yes, perhaps give this same group till about the hour mark to perhaps continue to unlock some things. We did see some player adjustments in this one, and maybe I want to get your thoughts on those, in terms of these substitutions that came into this game for the United States, just ahead of that second goal from Spain, and right around the hour mark, we got to see Crystal Dunn continue to work on her minutes and develop on time with the team. Sam Coffey came in for Andy Sullivan, and Sophia Huerta coming in for Haley Mace. Now, when we're looking at these particular positions on the pitch, Huerta for Mace, Coffey for Sullivan, Dunn for Pickett, would you say that these were some of the areas that desperately sort of needed some attention, going into this deeper into this second half? Because we were looking at that, that first goal didn't necessarily give an indication that the United States were going to, have the wheels fall off of them. But we definitely saw Spain continue their game plan. They were trying to exploit some things along the wings there.
Yeah, so this is like a double-edged sword for me, because watching this game, I felt that there was it was flat. There was a lack of energy in the midfield and the front six. I'm going to be honest, the front six of the United States players, and the back four were put under a lot of pressure. And they were newer, right? You have Pickett there, you have Mace. Of course, Sauerbrunn is a huge veteran, but you do have a little bit of newness across that back line in dealing with this Spain side. And I don't think that the front six did any favors to the back four in their defensive efforts. So initially heading into the halftime, I was like, okay, maybe we'll see some frontline adjustments, right? Or maybe even a midfield adjustments, just to get some fresh blood in there, right? To change it up. Because as a player sitting on the sideline, standing next to your coach, assistant coaches all around you, you're learning so much about what's happening on the game, where the spaces are, how things can happen. Because Spain rolled out there with a 5 back, and the United States had trouble breaking that down, right? Their shots on goal were 0 heading into the 60-minute mark. And to give Spain a lot of defensive credit, they held the United States at arm's length. So then when we go into this substitution period for Vlatko Andonovski, and he does rotate out Mace and Pickett and Sullivan, the big defensive players, as Sullivan in that defensive 6 role, and then your outside backs, I was like, yeah, I mean, these players are not doing great. They're being put under a ton of pressure in the flanks of the pitch. Spain is doing a great job, combination play, attacking the wide areas of the field. Pickett and Mace are just under a lot of pressure. They're not able to get forward. They're not able to join in the attack. So in terms of that, yes, those were players, and that's where there was a lot of pressure on the field. But I think there was an opportunity for Vlatko Andonovski to rotate in some players higher up the pitch earlier in the game to kickstart the defensive efforts from the very front line. That would have been a valve release on the pressure that the outside backs were facing. And that's kind of where my mind was watching this match.
No, I feel you 100%, because we're looking at, like, I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like replaying the second goal in my mind, like listening to you talk about this. It's like having lyrics to a song, quite frankly. So I'm just kind of, you were watching this second goal come to life, and again, just looking for that answer or that adjustment. I think that was a big question mark coming into this game, out of that England game specifically, about the middle third. That there was an element of the United States midfield kind of getting bullied a little bit, quite frankly, out of that England game, and not maybe necessarily having the response, inadequate enough of a response, in that middle third. And I think, watching Andy Sullivan a bit during this game, I felt it was a little bit of a better performance out of that first game against England. But I'm also equally impressed with Sam Coffey and her ability to come in and try to sort of spearhead some things as well. It's definitely a bit of a question mark, in light of many players out and missing from the national team program at this moment. We did talk about, yes, how there wasn't an Alex Morgan or a Mallory Pugh, but just listening to Andonovski before this actual game, and in media and prior media availability going into this Spain game, specifically mentioning and noting how there are players unavailable for this match, and proceeded to go down a very long list outside of Alex Morgan and Pugh, but went on to mention, players like Katarina Macario not being in this, Tierna Davidson not being part of this group, Lynn Williams not being part of this group, Sam Mewis not being part of this group. And that's understandable. But at the same time, like listening to this, it's kind of like, well, there's also no real updates at this current timeline for these particular players. So this is the group moving forward. And what we've seen in some NWSL matches out of some clubs, that if the system is working and in place, you're able to slot in players in and out as you see fit because the system is in play and it is something that they can fall into. I don't know at this point if we're seeing that with this team